Thank you for coming, everybody. Today we are hosting a workshop with the Rec's very own Martin Danner of Conversator. Martin has decades of IT experience, and also he has his own podcasting platform known as Conversator, which he uses to promote podcasting amongst individuals who would otherwise not be interested in it. And with that, I think I'll hand it off to Martin to introduce himself. Thank you for coming, Martin.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that intro, and thank you to all of you who showed up this morning. I hope you find this presentation useful and interesting. I know that information technology can sometimes not be the most exciting topic in the world, but it's really important, you know, when we're building a business that we use the right systems. It's not only going to help you be more competitive, but it also is something that can help you scale if you do it correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and share some slides.
Can I ask you a quick question? Hi, this is Angela.
Yes.
Before we get started, could you give us a little bit more information about your background on IT? And
I'm gonna do that in just a minute.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, so let's see here. So this is what we'll be talking about today. First, we're going to be talking about the overall strategy for your information technology. And I'm going to promote one called Mobile First, Cloud First. Then we're going to talk about some of the key business applications that you'll want to use in your business. And last but not least, information security, which is a really important topic these days. So well, let me see here. Let's do this first. Okay, so my background is actually I've been a software developer for many years. And then about 10 years ago, my oldest son, Jason, and I started this company called AeroRock in New Zealand, of all places. We were both living down there at the time. He's still down there, and he's running the show. And I'm working with Jason part-time remotely here from San Diego County. So, you know, thanks to the amazing technology, the interweb and what have you, I can actually do pretty much 99% of all the work that I need to do from here. And that other 1%, I hand off to Jason. No, I'm just kidding. Anywho, it's been great working with him. And what I'm going to do is share with you my experiences from that business. So let's go back here and Stephen, if you could just put up that first poll, because I'm kind of interested in knowing what your overall comfort level with technology is. So if you could answer this question, be quite interesting.
So for those watching the recording, the answers are: I'm one of the people to go to for answers, and I'm the one asking questions. I know personally, for me, it's definitely both that I have to deal with.
Oh, we probably should have had that as a third option, huh?
End the polling in 10 seconds. All right.
Okay, so it looks like a pretty evenly split. Maybe a few more of you are feeling not totally comfortable with technology, but that's cool. That's good. Thanks for that, Stephen. And so what I'm going to do now is go to the next slide here. And another question: what devices are you using? So Stephen, if you could pop that up on the screen. Cool.
This one you can choose multiple choice, because I know some people are using multiple devices at the same time.
Good point.
All right, I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds before I end the polling. The options are smartphone, tablet, laptop computer, or desktop computer. Stop it right now. And here are the results.
Okay, very interesting. So it looks like a lot of people are on laptops. Got a few desktops in there, and a good smattering of smartphones and tablets. Great, that's great to know. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the mobile first strategy first. Now, you know, when PCs first came out, they were desktop units, big old clunky things, and then they got more and more portable as time goes on. Businesses, for the most part, use desktop units for many years until just recently, when they transitioned, are in the process still of transitioning over to mobile devices, things like smartphones, tablets, and laptops. Now, these devices offer some really compelling advantages in that you can take them with you. You can pretty much do work anytime, anywhere, which is quite handy. And secondly, they get their own built-in battery backup systems so that if the power goes out, you don't lose all your work. And it allows you to just get out there and be with your customers. I know it's been kind of difficult to do in the last year or so, but when things start getting back to normal, it's really important to be able to spend as much time with your customers as you can. And if you're stuck behind a terminal on your desk, that just doesn't work so well. So there are actually some good reasons for using desktop computers, and those typically have to do with tasks that are stationary. Let's say you might want to have a computer in the warehouse or in the machine shop or in the doctor's office, you know, things like that. Maybe a point of sale system at the restaurant. So there are good reasons for having desktop computers. I'm just suggesting for most of the work we do, one of these mobile devices is probably your best bet. Okay, now when I talk about cloud first, I'm talking about the idea that you're using apps in the clouds, apps that you would access through things like your iPhone and your Android device, or possibly through a web browser like Firefox, Chrome, and Safari. These are apps that are not software on your computer. They're in the cloud. And the main advantage of that, really, well, there's a lot of advantages, but when you're using desktop software, you know, software installed on your desktop, well, that's something that you have to update and maintain. It's isolated. You can't really collaborate with it. You have to back up the information yourself, make sure that that's backed up. So if you have a disk failure, you don't lose it. These are all disadvantages of desktop software. It's really kind of like yesterday's technology, really. Most of us are all in the cloud now, and we're using the cloud for a variety of things. Pretty much all the apps you're going to use in your business, you can use our cloud-based system. And you can access them from a variety of different devices. And pretty much anywhere you can get access to the internet. So the point being is that these apps are actually, they're not in the sky, but they're actually in a data center somewhere, and you're using their computers to run the application. All you're using your device for is basically a display, a dumb terminal, if you will, to access the information. So any questions about those, like the app first, mobile first kind of strategy?
I have a question, Martin. So
Sure.
with the shift to mobile, do you think that desktops and like the bigger, chunkier computers with like the more processing power are eventually going to become obsolete? Do you think like laptops will eventually catch up to that amount of strength? Or do you think that there's always going to be a need for both?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you, Steve, in this industry, my crystal ball's a bit hazy. I'm kind of reluctant to make predictions because things change so rapidly, but there will probably always be a need for desktops of one sort. You know, like I mentioned, when you've got a task-based application that you need to use it for. And Yeah, like you bring up a good point, like CAD systems, for doing design work or heavy duty graphics. Those tend to require more horsepower than you can fit into a laptop in most cases. So those are workstation based, but we're seeing more and more laptops do that sort of stuff too. So I would say that as we go forward, mobile devices are going to be the mainstream, and desktop devices are going to be the exception.
The second question I had about cloud first. How secure would you say that like cloud technology is nowadays? Because I don't know, I've always been a bit wary about having stuff stored in the cloud, especially like personal sensitive information. How secure would you say that is, especially with all the leaks and the hacking that's been happening recently?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very important topic, a good question. And we're going to talk about that. And we're actually going to spend a fair bit of time talking about that. And I guess the short answer is it's as secure as you make it. Sure, the cloud app vendor, they have some responsibilities around protecting your information, and some of them seem to be doing a better job of it than others. But you also have a lot of responsibility yourself in terms of making sure that your information is secure. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail later. Any other questions? Okay. Well, let's move on then. Let's talk about apps. Let's do one more round of questions here, and Steve, if you could put up a big poll, the poll about what sort of apps you're using. And again, this is multiple choice.
For those watching at home, the apps are email, Slack / Microsoft Teams, voice video communications, word processing / spreadsheet / presentation apps, file sharing apps, accounting / financial apps, sales and marketing apps, and human resources apps, and also other. Just give that another maybe 5 seconds till I end it. Stop that right now. Oh, last person getting in there. All right, I'm going to end the polling right now.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. I kind of expected email to be at 100%. Apparently, there's somebody out there that's not using it.
Somebody in the chat not using email. Interesting.
Yeah, good to see that collaboration like Slack and Microsoft Teams, good adoption there. Not so much on voice and video communications, although if you think about it, what we're doing right now is a form of video communications. Zoom, word processing, spreadsheet presentation, that's a category also referred to as productivity apps. And looks like quite a
The
few
entire Microsoft suite.
The Microsoft suite, yeah, Google G Suite, that sort of thing. File sharing, yep, you'll be using more of that as you go along. Accounting and financial is interesting that only 25% of you are using financial or accounting software. Maybe you're not at the point yet to where you actually need to keep track of money, but that's going to be a very important tool for you once you get your business up and running. Sales and marketing is also going to be huge. 0 on human resources. I guess that means nobody's hiring anybody in this particular group. But at some point you'll need something like that. In other, 42% other. Interesting. So that other could be quite a large category. And it's often also known as line of business applications. In other words, applications that are specific to your type of work. And if you'd like to share in the chat, maybe some of the apps that you are using, that'd be very interesting to see that. I actually can't see the chat, I don't think right now since I'm screen sharing, but we'll check that out later. All right. Now, I'm going to talk about the foundation apps. So these are the apps that absolutely every business needs. And there's just 2 main games in town. And the first one's Google Workspace, previously known as Google G Suite until just recently. It's now Google Workspace. And then there's Microsoft 365. And both of them are bundles of a variety of different applications, but involve primarily the items listed there: email, contacts, calendar, word processing, spreadsheet, collaboration, file sharing, and sometimes a few other things. So those are the main ones. It'd be interesting to know if anybody's using anything else out there. But I would say that that's the foundation that you need to work with. I'm going to probably focus this presentation on Google Workspace primarily because I think most of us are probably using that one since it's free. All right, now an interesting kind of subset of that is collaboration. And Google doesn't really have, because they have Google Meet for collaboration and Google Chat. So there are some tools there. But it seems like a lot of people are adopting these kind of tools. Slack is quite popular. And I'm sure many of you are probably using Slack. It's a great tool. You can get into it for free. Same thing with Trello. Trello is not so much about collaboration. It's kind of more of a project management tool, but it's also something you can get for free and allows you to collaborate on project-related information. And of course, there's Microsoft Teams, which is basically Microsoft's answer to Slack, which is gaining more and more popularity, primarily because, to be honest with you, most small businesses are on Microsoft 365. Simply because they've come out of that whole Office suite workspace, people using Word, Excel, that sort of thing, just naturally migrated to Outlook, I should say, naturally migrated to the Microsoft 365 ecosphere, which now includes Microsoft Teams, which is actually pretty good. It was kind of clunky at first, but it's getting better. Okay, now file sharing is going to be an important thing for you. And it's also an important thing in terms of having your files in more than one spot, having some redundancy there. And these are your three main choices. Google Drive, of course, is part of the Google Workspace suite. And OneDrive for Businesses is the other really popular one, if you will. And both of those actually can be connected to your computer, to your laptop, or your desktop if you're using Windows, so that anytime you save a file to any folders that are part of that, those files will automatically be saved to the cloud through Google Drive or through OneDrive. And that's super, super useful. It's a great real-time backup tool. The other nice thing it does for you is it gives you version history, which means that if you say that you're working on a spreadsheet or something and you just totally screw it up, and you just say, oh man, I just want to go back to the previous version, you can do that through one of these things. The third one, Dropbox, is, you can get a free one, but it has next to no storage. And a lot of people use Dropbox though, because it just is so easy, it works really well. And it also has really good restore capabilities. In other words, you can use Dropbox to restore entire folders, or maybe even in your whole file system. And there's a good reason for doing that. Ransomware. We'll be talking a little bit more about that here in a bit. But let's say you get clobbered with ransomware, all your files get encrypted. If you have something like Dropbox and all your files are in that, you can very easily roll back to the unencrypted version of it. So it's a great restore capability. Okay, now at some point you're going to need to be able to do some bookkeeping, manage your finances. And the list there on the left are some free accounting systems that you can get. And all you need to do is do a Google search on free accounting, free online accounting, and you'll find these. And it's a good way to get started in that. It's very important to keep track of your books when you're running a business, for tax reasons, and also just to know where you're at in terms of profit and loss, balance sheet, that sort of stuff. Those are really important. I've got QuickBooks over on the right because that's by far the most popular online accounting system. Now that's one that you have to pay some money for, but once your business gets to a certain size, that's probably the kind of tool you'll want to use. And I do recommend the online version. They do have a desktop version. What you might call a legacy version of QuickBooks, because I think There's actually very, very little reason to use a desktop version when you've got some great options online. Okay. Now, before we get into the next topic, which is cybersecurity, any questions from anybody on apps?
Looks like Philippe has a question.
Okay.
When do you think it is better to have someone else take care of your business finances rather than relying on those tools yourself?
Oh, well, a lot of people use bookkeepers, and that's a great option, Philippe. Uh, especially if you want to spend as little time as possible working on that sort of stuff, bookkeeping, and focus more on your business. So I have to say, though, that with the online accounting packages like Quicken and QuickBooks and some of the others, they connect directly to your bank account. And so um, bookkeeping gets a lot easier because you can just pull those transactions in, reconcile them rather quickly, and also categorize them. And the other thing I didn't mention about accounting, of course, is that these systems are also used to send out invoices and billing, and that's, once you get paying customers, that's really important to do, and they make it easy to do that sort of thing. So I would say that the need for a bookkeeper is kind of not as much as it used to be. It's not as tedious a job as it once was, but it can be handy if you want to focus on other things. Let's see, another question here about Google Workspace. Yes, you can use Google Workspace for independent teams. And in fact, they have these things called team folders in Google Workspace that allow you to control who are members of those folders, which is really quite nice. So I'd suggest looking into that because it's a lot more straightforward than trying to manage permissions on the folder level or the file level, which of course you can do as well, but that turns into a real rat's nest after a bit. So look into team folders. I'd highly recommend that. Any other questions?
I had a question that was accidentally sent private message to me, but do these apps do payroll?
Yes, that's a good question. Payroll is a related financial application, but they don't necessarily do them directly. Things like QuickBooks and some of these other apps, they're more like what you call a general ledger for just basic bookkeeping. Payroll tends to be a separate application, and I didn't really list any there, but gosh, there's a number of good online services for payroll.
You want me to
And
say one? So
sure.
the one challenge though is that I actually use a bookkeeper, and the reason is that at the end of the year you're still stuck with having to do a K1 if you're an
Okay.
LLC, or even if you're a C corp, you have to put something out as a financial, and you got to pay taxes and you got to do all that. I'm not sure there's one package that gives you all of that. So I actually use my accountant, my bookkeeper to do who becomes my bookkeeper because I said, but we do use a service for payroll. I have to look it up. It's iPay or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem is it's not just the week to week, the quarter to quarter, it's also the year to year. So yeah, it sucks.
There is a lot of administrivia involved, isn't there, Ray, in running a business?
Yes, sir.
So
So don't want to scare anybody off, but yeah, if you want to sidebar with me, just whenever you want, I can show you what I've done. But it's an expensive proposition. I mean, that's the problem at that point. So
yeah. The nice thing is that you don't need to get into a lot of these systems until you get your business to a certain size, and then you can justify having that sort of stuff. Excuse me. Another area, payroll. I guess another financial system we didn't talk about is tax preparation software. And you folks might be familiar with that for your personal taxes. but you'll also need something to prepare your business taxes as well. So that is something you might want to look into. Again, you can just Google, tax preparation software and find things. TurboTax is a real popular one for business. Ray, you got any suggestions on that?
So it's a matter of how much you want to do versus how much I hate that stuff. So unfortunately, I am not a good prototype because I just told I have an accountant, I have to tell you. So I just said to her, deal with it. And it, just so you know, it run me to do the K1 and the yearly, it runs about $250 to prepare all that and do all that. I don't know about the quarterlies yet and the payroll because that's going to be a surprise. So, but just so you know, the numbers I've looked at for payroll and affiliate, because once you're into payroll, you're into Social Security, you're into all this other stuff you got to do federally and state. And generally, the charges are anywhere from about $12 to $25 a month.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not inexpensive once you start piling all this stuff up, and they won't do the taxes, right? So yeah.
Right. So there you go. But they can be real time savers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to security?
So Martin, I'd just like to make the point really strongly about what you just said. The real question you have to ask yourself is, where do I get bang for my buck? If I spend 2 hours working on the taxes and the payroll and QuickBooks and all that, is my time, or can I be spending 2 hours doing engineering work or 2 hours marketing or talking to people, and I will get, so basically I'm getting traction for my company. So you really have to think that out.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. And as the businesses grow, a lot of this administrative work just tends to get more and more. And if you're not careful, it can really distract you, bog you down, and keep you from doing things that are important for creating your business and growing your business. Okay. Steve, do we have any other questions before we move on?
I think that's all of the questions in the chat.
All right. Well, let's go back to screen share here and get into a super important topic, which is cybersecurity or information security. And I think that have all heard about this recent news item about the Scripps healthcare system getting hacked. And that happened about 7 days ago. And I'm a Scripps member, and I still can't get into my health portal. So I don't know what's going on there, man, but they're having a heck of a time getting back online. From what I understand, it was a ransomware attack, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But the point is that this can happen to any business. And believe it or not, more than half of all the cyber attacks do occur to small businesses. So don't think they're just going after the big companies. They're going after what you might call low-hanging fruit, the ones that are they're easy to exploit. And that means that companies that are using poor security practices, and small businesses tend to be among the poorest in terms of security practices. So let's get into that a bit. First thing I want to do is I'm going to play a little video for you on phishing, and I'm going to cover some of the main cyber threats, if you will, that you're going to experience as a business owner, the main risks that you might experience. So let's watch this video here on phishing, which is kind of one of the primary ones.
While checking your email, you receive an alarming message from your bank. It says that your account might be jeopardized and provides a link to enter in your private information. Even though the logos and contact information appear to be correct, this email wasn't from your bank, but instead it was sent by cybercriminals looking to phish you. Phishing is when scammers trick you into divulging personal and financial information by pretending to be a legitimate source. Just like fishermen cast lines with bait attached, these scammers send out official-sounding emails, hoping that you will let your guard down. They often build entire pages and logins dedicated to looking like authentic banks or businesses, designed to get you to gain your trust and lower your guard. Even more alarming, Phishers can even pose as your friends and family to trick you. In some cases, a phishing email can install malware on your computer without you even entering your username and password, regardless of how they obtain it. Once cyber criminals have your login information, they can change your passwords, steal your money, and even your identity. There are many ways to identify a possible phishing email. No legitimate bank, government agency, or business would send you an email requesting that you re-enter your private information. Misspellings, poor grammar, and typos are also good indicators of a phishing email. If you receive a phishing email, the best thing to do is just ignore it and mark it as spam. You can also use anti-spam filters as a way to avoid these emails entirely. You should always be on guard when opening up unknown emails. And make sure you have the latest internet security and email protection software on your computer to avoid phishing scams entirely.
Okay. Could you folks hear that all right?
Yep, sounded perfect.
Oh, wonderful. Now, of course, that was video that was made by Kaspersky Labs, which is an antivirus vendor, and they're not necessarily one that I particularly endorse. I don't use their product, but they do have these great videos, so that's kind of cool. Now, so phishing is one of the main ways that people, these hackers, get into your system, and it's really important to be able to detect those, to be very careful about phishing type emails. And if anything about it looks at all fishy, which is why why they call it that, be careful. Think twice before you click on links or respond to it. Now, the other main one that we're seeing these days is ransomware. Again, that's what hit scripts, but it gets a lot of people. Once you get this into your system, it's really hard to get rid of. And let's watch this video here so you can find out more about it.
You log onto your computer just like you do every day, only to see your screen locked and device unable to boot up. A message demanding money or bitcoins appears instead. It's the moment that every computer or mobile device user dreads: ransomware. Ransomware is a form of malicious software or malware which restricts access to your computer or mobile device or encrypts data until you pay a ransom in exchange for accessing your device or data again. One typical example of ransomware is called Deadcryptor, which locks your devices and files until you're forced to pay a ransom. The payment that this malware demands is 2 bitcoins, which is more than $1,000. This form of cyber blackmail is one of the most dangerous forms of malware today, and one that's spreading rapidly worldwide. The number of users infected with ransomware keeps growing, along with continued increases in ransomware modifications, making it a constantly evolving threat. 2 forms of ransomware are currently the most widely used around the world: locker and crypto ransomware. Locker ransomware locks you out of basic computer functions, forcing you to pay a ransom to regain control. Crypto ransomware, on the other hand, encrypts sensitive data like documents and important files, threatening to destroy them unless you pay a fee. The 3 main ways ransomware can infect your computer is through spam, spear phishing, and watering hole attacks. Scareware tactics are also used to spread ransomware by creating fake software or messages purporting to be from a legitimate source, but actually demand that you pay a ransom to regain control of your computer. As dangerous as ransomware is, you're not helpless against it. It's important to know how to recognize how ransomware is spread, and the defensive measures you can take to stop it before it becomes a serious problem. Avoid phishing scams that spread ransomware by not opening any suspicious emails or links, and also avoid visiting any suspicious websites that may contain ransomware. Know how to recognize scareware tactics by cyber criminals too. Be sure to back up your computer or mobile device and always use up-to-date internet security software equipped with specific anti-ransomware technologies. Above all, never pay a ransom, as it only emboldens the cyber criminals behind these scams. Ransomware is a serious threat that can affect you and all computer and mobile device users. But by knowing how to avoid it and by using up-to-date security software, you can stay safe. Do your part by staying vigilant, and investing in trusted security software today.
Well, there you go. Another thing to be aware of and to be on the lookout for. And it's very important that you have to be ready. You never know when that's going to happen, especially as your business grows and you get more people in your business. And it could be that somebody does the wrong thing and this thing manages to get into your systems and just make a mess of everything. So it's good to have a strategy in mind on how you're going to deal with this before it happens. Any questions on any of that so far?
How often would you say, as a small business or a rising business, would these attacks target you? Is this something like extremely rare, or do you think it happens a lot?
Well, it happens a lot, and what the chances are of happening to you specifically really depends on your security practices. I mean, if you're sloppy about it, you know, and really don't pay attention to possible phishing attacks, or maybe you visit dodgy websites, that sort of thing, or you're using antivirus that's not up to date, then there's a good chance that you're going to get hit at some point. Because again, that makes you the low-hanging fruit, and that's exactly what the hackers are looking for. Russians have more time. Yeah, they seem to be pretty busy at this sort of stuff, that's for sure. Okay, so let's, one thing I was going to mention is that they mentioned in that video that one of the ransomwares charges 2 Bitcoin to release your information, and it was $1,000 when that video was made a couple of years ago. Now it's up to about $60,000. It's pretty amazing. So getting out of this ransomware stuff is not cheap. So they talked about these type of cyber attacks. You know, we all know what spam is, and unfortunately most of our email systems are pretty good at capturing and filtering that. Spear phishing, you know, that's the idea of phishing attacks that are directed towards individuals as opposed to, say, organizations or just people in general. Watering hole, that was where that's those dodgy websites. Well, actually, it can even be a legitimate website that's been hacked by somebody and that now delivers malware, even though it's legit. I mean, that can happen. And then scareware is the kind of stuff where you get these really frightening messages that say, oh, you know, we found 41 viruses, but in fact, it's just fake. And all they're trying to do is get you to click on something, some service or whatever that isn't real. And, you know, I've always wondered why it is hackers always wear hoodies. I don't know. Does anybody know?
And so they can remain mysterious.
Yeah. But every time you see a picture of a hacker, it's like a hoodie. I guess that's like the
stereotypical image of a hacker.
Yeah, it's the uniform. So, well, I guess these guys aren't wearing hoodies, but you can tell that it's a big problem. And look at the bounty on these guys, these Russian hackers. That clearly they've been up to no good, and it's a huge problem. It's just getting worse, you know, and frankly, we have to be more and more careful about these things. It's a shame that that we do, but it's very important because if you get hit by one of these things, it can be very disruptive.
Looks like we have a question in chat. I'm just gonna say, I think Jesse's trying to ask how effective are VPNs, because she uses it for her jobs, but she turns it off for other jobs, and she's just wondering how it fits into protecting your data. And if I'm guessing if VPNs are effective, and how effective are they?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and let's say you're working from a cafe, you know, or for some public place like a library. Well, any traffic going in and out of your computer can be actually monitored by a third party. There's actual software that could allow somebody to monitor that. Now, I would say that VPNs aren't as important as they used to be, because most of these cloud-based apps are handled through encrypted connections, things like HTTPS, which means that all the communications between your computer and the cloud app are encrypted, so nobody can see what's going on there anyway. But it is possible for things to leak, bits and pieces here that are not encrypted. So I guess the question becomes two things. One, what is the likelihood that somebody's snooping? And the second one is, you know, what's going across the line that might be interest to them. So bottom line is that VPNs, I would say, are not critical in most cases. However, it's good practice. You know, I wouldn't discourage using it. And if you're working on something that's of a critical nature, let's say, you know, you're reaching, going to banking applications, that stuff, even though they are encrypted, it wouldn't hurt to use a VPN connection if you're on a public Wi-Fi. Okay, I hope that answered your question.
I can add to that a little bit. This is from my experience as InfoSec for Morgan Stanley.
Okay.
We had a whole team that did this. So VPNs are expensive to set up, to make sure they're right, to do. But what they do is they create a pipe on a different portal than than your normal 80, which is what you use for your websites. Everything. Yes. Think about it as one big pipe. So what you're doing is, when you're doing a VPN, is you're creating a break through another port, through another, think about it, creating a new pipe that nobody else can see and that nobody else knows is there. And so it's just a more effective way than just using HTTPS, but it's expensive. So people that set that up typically have to worry about data integrity and making sure people don't hack into it. So that's the only reason you use VPNs, but it slows the crap out of your system. There are downsides to its use, okay? So, and by the way, most of what Martin is talking about, people hack you on your computer. So using a VPN or HTTPS may be way too late because they may already be on your computer.
It's an excellent point, Ray. A VPN is not going to protect you from a phishing attack, for instance. So yeah, it is expensive. It's difficult to set up. If you're doing an enterprise VPN, you can buy these VPN services like NordVPN, you know, for, I don't know, 10, 20 bucks a month. And it's actually fairly easy to use, but as Ray points out, it can be a bit resource intensive. So here's an example of a watering hole attack. Let's see, am I still sharing? Probably not.
You're not sharing, but I also did want to say we're running a little bit low on time, so if you have any questions, please ask them in chat and we'll get to them at the end if we have time.
Okay. All right, well, we'll zip through the last bit here. Here's what a watering hole attack looks like. You know, you might see this come up from time to time. It's your web browser warning you that you're going to a site that's got some bad stuff on it. And this is what a scareware attack can look like. You get a message like this. It pops up on your screen out of nowhere. Sometimes it can just be something fake, you know, some malware, or maybe even just a web site that's sending you a fake message trying to get you to buy something. Layered approach to security. This is the important way to do this. You need to take a layered approach, and your foundation layer is your antivirus software. It's really important to have that. Windows Defender is free. Avast, they have a free edition, but Defender is another popular one. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there. Those are some of my favorites. Web browser security. It wouldn't hurt to go into your web browser and check the security settings on that to make sure that it is going to warn you about unsafe sites that you might be visiting and that sort of thing. Account security. You know, if you're using Google, for instance, or Microsoft, you can actually use a security checkup utility that checks on your settings to make sure that you're not leaving any holes open for hackers come in through. And so quickly, what password security do you use, if any? Passwords, of course, are the keys to all our online apps. And we've got a couple of choices there.
I added a none of the above option because I use none of the above. As bad as that sounds.
Good point. Good point. Well, you're not alone, Stephen. I'm sure that a lot of folks are in that.
I know for some things they force you to do multi-factor authentication like Google, but for other stuff that doesn't force, this is bad. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I will switch to a password vault for all you hackers out there listening right now.
All good.
Okay.
All right. What do we got?
Okay. We have.
Oh, very good. So a lot of folks are using MFA. Yeah, as you mentioned, Stephen, some apps absolutely require it, and very little adoption for password vaults and password generators. Well, let's go take a quick look at those and see what those are all about. Okay, so password management systems, also known as password vaults, are really useful, really important. And the reason is because when you have all these different systems you're using online, what we tend to do is we come up with some scheme like, oh, we'll just use the same password for every one of them, or maybe we'll save the password in an Excel spreadsheet, you know, or use something that's real easy to remember, which is then real easy to hack. So you're best off using a password management system. The one you see right there is LastPass. And the thing that it does for you is it allows you to use passwords that are unique and strong. It's really important that you use a different password for each one of the systems that you use. That way, if one gets hacked, it doesn't give them access to everything. The other important thing is that it needs to be strong. It needs to be something that's not easily guessed. And the strongest kind of password is just a random sequence of gibberish, you know, of characters. And systems like LastPass can generate those sort of things. And then they can save them for you, so you don't even need to remember it. So that is by far the safest way to manage and safeguard your passwords. Multi-factor authentication, I probably don't need to go into a whole lot of detail there since most of you are using that. The fact is, you know, these numbers change every 30 seconds, and unless somebody has access to your device, they can't get in, even if they do have your password.
Oh, wait.
Hmm?
Oh, I think multi-factor people, I'm actually very surprised that that's such a high number for multi-factor authentication. I think you might want to ask if people think multi-factor authentication is simply having a text sent to your phone or something that you then put in a number. Because that's different than Authenticator.
That is actually a form of multi-factor authentication, but this is an example of another one. This is
I understand, but I call that Authenticator. So I'm just wondering, I am absolutely surprised at 89%. I would ask the question if people think that multi-factor authentication is Authenticator or whether it's just sending to your phone the ability to have a password put in, you know, so those are two different animals, right?
Well, they're both forms of multi-factor authentication. The authentication app is actually a more secure form and would be a preferred form if you can do that. And it works great. Okay, whoops, let's go the other way. Then the last one is user awareness, which of course is what we're doing right now. You know, the idea that you become aware of these things and some of the ways that you can make your online experience more secure. And last but not least is backup. Make sure you back up your data. You know, these are some backup. I mean, the way we did it in the olden days is you backed up to an external drive, right? But that was kind of of limited use because those things break too. You got these backup software applications like CrashPlan and Carbonite. But as I mentioned earlier, things like Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive, if you're backing up your data to that in real time, well, that makes it very easy for you to use the data across multiple devices, or if your computer goes belly up, it's very easy to get up and running again on another device, and it protects you against things like ransomware. Okay, that's about all I've got. So let's open it up for questions if there's time.
I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if anybody has anything. I know Philippe said in chat that Google very soon is going to be automatically enabling MFA for new accounts, which is awesome.
Yeah. What was that? Could you run that by me again?
Google is very soon enabling multi-factor authentication for all accounts by default.
Okay. Yeah, and I would highly recommend that you turn that on. You know, you might think that nobody's interested or what have you, but you know, if you do get hacked and you lose your identity and what have you, it's believe me, it makes life miserable.
Yeah, and I know people. It's word of caution for everybody out there. I know people who've gotten their identity stolen, and they're just like really just people, everyday workers. They're not even like tech moguls. They're not like billionaires, millionaires, really rich people. It's just everyday people get their identity stolen all the time.
It's crazy.
Like
What else? Any other questions? I see somebody lost their authenticator.
That was me.
Oh.
Yeah, I used to have an offline authenticator for something, and I lost it. And then...
Martin.
So now Android actually provides a unified authenticator tool, which is really cool. So I have an authenticator for like LastPass, for my government access, for Facebook. So it just runs right off of it. You can tell it which application you want, and it pops right in. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, yes. And things like Google Authenticator and what have you, you can move it from one device to another so that you won't lose information. Philippe, did you have something?
Yes, I do. I just say thanks for this presentation. My question is, if you have a strategy when you backup your files, because like at least is what I do. I usually like backup my files online, but I think it's important to have a plan B.
Okay.
So have a strategy, for instance?
Yeah, actually, my favorite way to go about that is for any information that's critical to your business, you want to have it in at least 3 separate places. One would be, of course, your computer, probably the hard drive, maybe. Another one would be, and these are, by the way, local files. Another one would be Dropbox, you know, or Google Drive, that sort of thing. And then you might also put another layer in there, things like CrashPlan to back it up to yet a different service. And if you had those 3, your chances of losing any particular file drop to pretty much 0. So that's what I like. Now, the thing with online applications is that you're kind of expecting them to back up your data for you. And sometimes you can take out the data, and other times you can't, but you need to be careful about that. But thanks for the question, Philippe.
Thank you, Martin.
Yep. Ray said something in chat. He said a flash drive or an external hard drive just in case you lose internet access. I think that's a great idea as well.
Yep. It is very good. Any other questions?
Just lose electricity once in your life, and you'll understand how this stuff sucks when you're trying to build something or just communicate with people, or just even say, oh, you know, the power's out. Well, let me work on this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, unless you got pen and paper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of mobile devices. They have their own battery backups.
Right.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I think that's going to be the end of the workshop. Is there anything else you want to leave us with, Martin, before we end it all?
Well, you know, again, these systems are just so critical to your business and the success of your business. So you know, be careful about the systems you choose, you know, make sure you vet your vendors and go with quality vendors and quality services. If you have any questions or anything, contact me. You know, we're here to help each other. So happy to answer any questions offline.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
All right. Thank you, Steve, for hosting this.
All right. Thank you. I'm gonna end it all. So All right. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Hertz, and I'm the director of the Regional Entrepreneurship Center, the Rec Innovation Lab at San Diego Miramar College. And I'd like to thank our partners at this time and give a special thanks to SDSU's Lavin Center, the SDSU Zip Launchpad. We'd like to thank the California Entrepreneurship Educators Conference. Also like to thank Harness, the Brink SBDC at USD, San Diego Unified Schools. We'd also like to thank School of Entrepreneurship and Technology, High Tech High, the Regional Advisory Committee, Alex Waters at the Jacobs Center, Connect All, 21IQ Labs, Startup Quest, Productified. I'd like to thank Course Key and Tech Coast Angels. Thank you to Village Up, City Heights Development Corporation, San Diego Angel Conference, Startup San Diego, SBDC, Score San Diego, We Are Kingdom, New Media Rights, San Diego Tech Hub, Origin 63, Ambrosio 15, OmniSync, Optima Office, Proven Recruiting, Craft Leadership, GS&L Consulting. Thank you to all of our partners. We couldn't do what we do without you. Thank you.